Today we are going to have a look at something called as SQL injection. SQL injection attack is a code injection technique that allows an attacker to execute arbitrary commands on a SQL database, which is serving a web application, right? So if you're successful, you can actually extract all the important information from the SQL databases, maybe like usernames, passwords, email IDs, which are stored in the web application. So we're gonna do that. So we have a shopping e-commerce website down here on the screen, right? Pretty simple setup down here. As you see on the screen, there are many places where the user can input data, like the username, password down here. Also, there is something called as poll, right? So the user can, um, you know, provide certain input over here as well. So let's start something called as tamper data to see how the inputs are actually sent to the web server, right? So let's start the tamper, and maybe let's play with the poll around here. So let's vote on something. So when you vote, let's submit the tamper, and as you see on the screen, you know we have a very interesting get request which is sent to the web server, and I feel this particular get request might be vulnerable to SQL injection. So let's try that, right? So as you see on the screen, we have option and ID. These are like the two values which are sent as get request. So in order to test if this um, so when we clicked on that, we actually got the poll results populated on the screen. So let's test if this particular piece of code is vulnerable to SQL injection. So let's do a very simple hack which is very common in SQL injection. So let's try to dump the entire database or entire table corresponding to this SQL query, right? Yes, it works. So you saw that the number of values over here increased, right? So we actually uh, were able to dump the entire table corresponding to this particular you know uh, URL, right? So we understand that this particular web application is prone to SQL injection. All right. So now if you observe carefully, this is actually built using a very common framework called as Joomla, right? Maybe we can have a look at what version they are actually using. So let's use Firebug to actually do that. So let's see. Yeah. So by doing a quick look at the source code here, we come to know that they're using a version called 1.5, right? Joomla 1.5. Now if you do a smart Google search, you will end up finding the default database which this particular web application uses, right? The various tables which the web application uses, and if our developer was lazy to change any of that, then this application might be using the default tables, right? So my research tells me that there is a table called as JAWS users, which has the username and passwords of all the users who are registered with this particular website. So now let's go and try to fetch the username and passwords of all the users registered with this website. Can we do that? All right. So to do that, we are going to use a very simple hack called as a union hack, right? As you might know that union is a pretty common SQL statement, which is used to combine two SQL statements. So now we have realized that this part of the URL, actually speaking, the number over here basically defines what is populated here on the screen. So id is equal to 1 is basically corresponding to a particular row on the SQL database, and uh, as a result of that, the particular table is populated over here. So we know that this part of the URL, this part is actually corresponding to a SQL query. So we are going to put in the keyword union, and we are going to define our attacking SQL statement after this. All right, so that we will be able to piggyback our attacking statement along with the legitimate SQL query which is going as part of the URL, right? So let me write something like union select, right? Let's select maybe column 1 from the table called as Joe's users, and maybe let's comment it after this, right? So this is a pretty handy trick as well. Um, Putting this kind of a statement at the end basically comments the rest of the part of the query, right? Yeah. So just to remind you, this is the table which actually has the username and passwords of all the users registered with this shopping website, and doing this is the default table. So if the developer has not changed it, we will be able to extract the information, right? So now when I hit a enter over here, we get an error, right? We get a SQL based error, which means our union statement is not right. And the reason it is not right is because the basic rule of using the union statement is that the first part of the query should have the same number of columns as the second part of the query. And since we are outputting just one column over here, you know it resulted in an error, which means we need to try with different number of columns, because the first part of query might be trying to get more number of columns, right? So let's try with 2, right? No, 2 didn't work as well. Let's try with 3. No, we still get the error. So let's try with 4, right? Oh, we have got something. So I tried with 4, and the statement was successful, right? And we were able to the error vanished, right? So the data is clearly displayed over here, and which means the first part of the statement, the first SQL query, which is actually coded into the application, is outputting 4 columns. Okay, but if you observe closely here, there are just 2 values which are displayed on the screen, right? The query might be outputting 4 columns, but only 2 columns are displayed on the screen, right? So we have the rest of the values are pretty much static here. So we have just the pole and the corresponding value corresponding to that particular pole being output, right? So we have column 1, column 2, again column 1, column 2. So we have like 2 columns being displayed. So now we need to find out of these 4 columns which are those which are the exact which is the column number which is actually corresponding to these 2 columns. Because once we do that, then we will be able to piggyback the username and passwords which we are extracting from this table on those columns, right? So in step 1, what we did was we were able to find the number of columns which the default query or the web application query uses. And in the second part of the hack, what we'll try to do is we are trying to find which exactly are those columns, right? So now let's try with the column number 1, right? We are trying to extract the username. So let's try with this one. No, we don't see the usernames being populated here, so which means our guess was wrong. So let's try with column number 2. Okay, so this is basically a trial and error method. So I'm going to place the username on column number 2, and let's try now. Yeah, it was successful. So you see the usernames have populated down here, right? So this is the beauty of the union statement, right? So the second part of the query, this query is piggybacking, right? So corresponds to this, which is piggybacking to the earlier query, which is the default query. So now that we have obtained the usernames, let's see if the column number 3 would give us the password, right? So let's try that. Yes, we were successful. That was pretty easy. So we have obtained the username and passwords of all the users who are registered with this particular shopping website, right? Now I do see that this is using a hash and salt, right? Then I mean the next step would be actually to probably use tools like John the Ripper to extract uh, or decode this password over here, right? So that you can actually get into the application and exploit it, right? So that was a quick demo of uh, SQL injection, where we used union statement, right, to actually piggyback our exploit, right? So the second part of the statement, I would call this as an exploit. So we use the union to to send our exploiting SQL query, piggybacking the actual query which is built into the tool, right? Thanks for watching. Have a good day.